Alan had a 6-year-old son, and that 6-year-old son wanted to please his father so much. Well, one day his dad was getting ready to go to work, and Alan's son realized that there was ice on his father's car. And so he was going to go out and help his father out by cleaning the ice off his car. Well, as Alan got ready to go out the door, his son was just coming back in and was just gleaming, had a big smile on his face because he had helped to clean off Daddy's car. Well, Alan got a little concerned as he saw his son holding this metal bar. And so he saw his son was very pleased with what he'd been doing, and so he asked his son, "What have you been doing?" And he said, "Oh, I've been out cleaning off your car. There's ice on your car, so I went out and cleaned it off." And so Alan said, "Did you just clean off the windshield?" He said, "Oh no, I cleaned the ice off your whole car." Well, Alan went out and sure enough found that his son had scraped the ice all off his car, and there were a number of scratches also where the metal bar had scratched the paint. Now, Alan had a choice at that point. Would he respond to his son out of his son's intent? His son had no intent to do any harm. His son only had the intent of helping his father. Or would he respond to the damage that his son had done? Well, Alan's response to his son was one that was grace-filled, and he thanked him for helping to clean off his car and appreciated his son's effort in helping him. But he also asked that in the future he not do that without Daddy being present. But at that moment, Alan had the opportunity to show grace or to show judgment in his son's life. Richard had 4 children. The youngest of those 4 children was Larry. And at the age of 15 or 16, Larry and his father had a big argument. It seemed that they were at odds so much that Larry couldn't live in the household anymore, and Larry took off and went to live with his sister even while he was still in high school. Richard was talking to me when his son Larry was about 22 years old. About 6 years following their big blow-up. Richard told me, he said, "I don't care if I ever see or speak to my son again." At 16 years of age, there was some conflict between Larry and his father, and 6 years later, Richard said he hadn't seen his son in 6 years and didn't care if he ever saw him or talked to him again. Can you imagine never being able to get beyond an argument that would have happened at that season in his son's life? Richard lived in a home that didn't have a lot of grace. Didn't have a lot of grace in their relationships. John and Mary had been married for 10 years when Mary got romantically involved with someone from the office. She knew it was wrong. And yet, it all came to a head when John found out. John didn't want a divorce, but he said to Mary she had to make a choice. She had to make a choice as to whether she wanted to stay in the marriage and cut off the relationship with this person in the office, or whether she wanted to stay with him and divorce John. Could John really forgive his wife? Or would he hold it over her head the rest of her life? How would you describe relationships in your home? Are those relationships grace-filled, or are they void of grace? Jesus gives us a powerful image of grace in the parable of the prodigal son that's found in Luke chapter 15. When we look at this parable, we often focus upon the young son. After all, most of the time, the parable is named after him, the lost son or the prodigal son, and so we focus on him, or we get focused on the older son. Some of you may relate to the prodigal son because you've had a time in your life when you were running from God in order to please yourself or do what you wanted, or realize that your misbehaviors caught up with you sooner or later. Maybe for those who have been in the church longer, as you read deeper into the story, you might find yourself relating more with the older brother. The older brother is the one who stays home. He does the right thing. He serves his father. He's obedient. But then he becomes resentful with his father when he shows grace to his brother. He's upset because his father didn't reward him for his sense of duty in the same way that he rewarded the son who came back and asked for forgiveness. But maybe this story, instead of being called the prodigal son, should be called the waiting father or the grace-filled father. We may relate to either or both brothers, but we're called to be like the father. Let me say that again. We may relate to either or both of the brothers, but we are called to be like the father. Not just as parents, but in all of our relationships. Well, let's turn to the passage in Luke 15 and begin reading it with verse 11. It says, Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them." Now, to ask one's father for a share of your inheritance in this culture in Jesus' day was unheard of. Now, making such a request was like saying to your father, "Father, I wish that you were dead." Now, such a statement wouldn't go over well today. But especially in the culture in Jesus' day, that was not something that was done. The Jewish law in the book of Deuteronomy actually made provisions for children who did things like this. Actually, what parents were instructed to do in the book of Deuteronomy was that they were to take their son or their daughter to the elders who were sitting at the gate of the city, and that the elders would stone them, would put them to death. It was an issue that they were to not let such evil to live among them. Well, the father has it within his right to punish his son. But instead of the father demanding his rights, he grants the son's request. Not giving the son what he deserved was actually an act of grace. Now the message of this parable is not to always give your son or daughter what they want. But the point of grace is that you should give them what they need, not necessarily what they deserve. As the father in the story responded to his son, I believe that he was giving his son what he needed. The father knew that his son was going to learn some very difficult lessons. There were going to be hard life lessons to learn, but he also knew that his son needed those life lessons. Even though the father would not know exactly what the son was doing, even though the father would be separated from his son, he was willing to allow him to go through that pain in order that he could experience the growth that he needed in his life. Even though it wasn't what the father wanted, the father was willing to show his son grace because he knew that that's what his son needed.